The smell was the first thing that made me stop walking. Not the Ferris wheel, not the empty carnival grounds, not the wind pushing through rusted metal, just the smell rising from somewhere beneath the ride, thick and sour, like something buried had decided it was tired of staying underground. It started on a hot afternoon around 4:30 p.m., when the park should have been full of families and music. Instead, the gates were locked and the entire fairground was silent, except for the slow creaking of the Ferris wheel turning slightly in the wind. That place had been closed for 2 years, but the city had finally hired a cleanup crew to dismantle the rides, and I was one of the workers sent to inspect the structure. My name doesn't really matter, but back then I worked as a seasonal maintenance contractor who specialized in dismantling large equipment, old rides, metal towers, water slides, anything the city wanted removed without drawing attention. The Ferris wheel was supposed to be our biggest job that summer. When I first walked through the abandoned fairground, it felt strange in a way that was hard to explain. Carnival music usually hides a lot of things: loose bolts, creaking metal, broken lights, but silence exposes everything. Every step I took echoed across the empty pavement. The Ferris wheel stood at the far end of the park, like a giant skeleton. The paint had faded from bright red to a dull brownish color, and several passenger carts hung slightly crooked from their joints. Wind moved through the structure with a hollow sound that reminded me of someone slowly exhaling. But none of that bothered me. The smell did. It was faint at first, something sour mixed with the sweet, leftover scent of old cotton candy machines and rusting metal. I remember wrinkling my nose and thinking maybe an animal had died somewhere under the ride. Before I continue, if you enjoy slow, unsettling stories like this, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel Unblinking. It really helps the channel keep sharing stories that make people question the quiet places we usually ignore. I walked closer to the Ferris wheel, stepping over faded ticket stubs and broken plastic cups that had probably been sitting there since the park closed. The smell grew stronger with every step. It reminded me of damp soil mixed with something older, not exactly rotten, but not natural either. At the center of the Ferris wheel, there was a metal platform where the control booth once stood. Most of the equipment had already been removed by another team earlier that week. All that remained was a square hatch in the concrete floor. The smell was coming from there. I crouched down and lifted the edge of the hatch slightly. A wave of warm air drifted upward, carrying that strange scent with it. I pulled my shirt over my nose and opened the hatch fully. Underneath was a maintenance pit, about 8 feet deep, where electrical wiring and hydraulic systems used to run through the base of the ride. Normally those pits are dry and full of cables. This one looked almost empty. Just dirt. Dark, damp dirt. I leaned down and shined my flashlight inside. The beam moved across the walls slowly until it reached the bottom. That's when I noticed the dirt was moving. Not fast. Just shifting slightly, like soil settling after rain. At first, I thought maybe water had seeped in during storms. The park had been abandoned long enough for underground leaks to happen. But then I noticed something else. The smell got stronger whenever the dirt shifted, almost like the ground itself was breathing. I stayed there longer than I should have, staring down into that pit. The sunlight above the Ferris wheel cast long shadows across the metal spokes, and the wind made the carts sway slightly. The entire structure creaked, but the dirt below continued its slow movement. I told myself it was probably insects or small animals underground. That explanation made enough sense at the time. Still, something about the smell made the back of my throat tighten. It wasn't just rot. It had a strange sweetness to it, the kind that makes your stomach uneasy without you understanding why. Later that evening, I mentioned it to the rest of the crew. Most of them laughed and said abandoned parks always smell weird. One of the guys joked that maybe the place had been built on top of a landfill. Another guy said old electrical pits sometimes collect methane gas. That explanation sounded reasonable enough, but when I went back the next day, the smell had spread. It wasn't just under the Ferris wheel anymore. It drifted across the entire ride platform like a heavy fog. The strange thing was that the air outside the circle of the Ferris wheel still smelled normal. Step inside the ride's shadow and the scent returned instantly. Step outside and it vanished. I remember standing there, testing it for almost 5 minutes. Back and forth across the edge of the shadow. The difference was immediate, every time. Maybe I was imagining it. Working long hours outdoors can play tricks on your senses. But the smell definitely felt stronger under the wheel. That afternoon, we started the dismantling process. The plan was to disconnect the passenger carts first, before bringing down the main structure, while the others climbed the metal ladders to reach the higher sections. I stayed near the base inspecting the central support. That's when the smell changed. Before it had been sour and damp. Now it smelled warmer, almost like something fresh had been uncovered underground. I looked toward the maintenance pit again. The hatch I had opened earlier was closed, but I didn't remember closing it. For a moment I thought maybe one of the crew had done it. Still, I walked over and lifted the hatch again. The dirt inside looked different now. It wasn't flat anymore. There were shallow grooves running across the surface like something had dragged through the soil. My flashlight being followed one of the grooves until it disappeared beneath the concrete edge. I felt a strange pressure in my chest while looking at it. A quiet instinct telling me something wasn't right. Then the smell hit me again. Stronger than before. So strong my eyes watered. I quickly dropped the hatch back into place. The rest of the workday passed without much happening, but the smell never left the area. Every few minutes the wind shifted and carried it across the ride. Some of the workers noticed it too, but none of them seemed as bothered as I was. By the third day, we had removed most of the passenger carts. The Ferris wheel looked half dismantled now, like an unfinished skeleton rising over the empty fairground. That afternoon, something else started happening. Whenever the wheel rotated slightly in the wind, the smell grew stronger. Not immediately, but about 10 seconds after each movement. I began noticing the pattern because the wind kept pushing the wheel at random times. Creak. Pause. Then the smell would rise from beneath the platform again. I didn't tell anyone right away because it sounded ridiculous. But once I noticed the pattern, I couldn't stop watching. Creak. Pause. Then the smell. Every time. Late that evening, I returned to the maintenance pit again. The crew had already left for the day, but I stayed behind, pretending to finish paperwork. The fairground was silent. Sunset turned the Ferris wheel into a dark outline against the orange sky. I opened the hatch again and shined my flashlight down. The dirt was no longer flat. It had sunk slightly in the center, like something underneath had pushed the soil upward before settling again. And the smell rising from the pit was so strong now, it made me dizzy. For a moment I considered climbing down there to inspect the wiring channels, but something stopped me. Not fear exactly, just a quiet feeling that going down there would be a mistake. I stepped back, closed the hatch again. The Ferris wheel above me creaked slowly as the wind moved through its metal frame. And for a second I thought I heard another sound from beneath the platform. A faint, scraping noise. Slow. Patient. Maybe I imagined it. Sleep deprivation can do strange things to your mind. The next morning, the smell had spread even further. It drifted across the ticket booths and snack stands near the Ferris wheel. Two of the workers complained about headaches. One guy said it reminded him of something he once smelled near a collapsed tunnel site. That comment stuck with me because tunnels have underground air pockets, and sometimes those pockets connect to places no one knows about. By the fourth day, the dirt inside the maintenance pit had changed again. When I opened the hatch, the surface looked uneven and hollow in places, almost like something had been pushing upward from below. I remember crouching there with my flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. The beam moved across the dirt slowly, then it stopped, because something down there was moving. Not the soil this time. Something beneath it, a slow shifting shape that made the ground rise and fall slightly. The smell grew thicker around the pit. For a moment, I felt like the air itself had weight. I closed the hatch again and stepped back. Maybe it was some kind of underground animal, or maybe gases from buried trash were pushing through the soil. I tried repeating those explanations in my head, but none of them explained the scraping sound that started later that night. By the fifth day, the Ferris wheel had stopped moving in the wind. The air around the ride felt heavy and still, but the smell had become impossible to ignore. Workers started wearing masks. One of them suggested we report it to the city inspection office. Before that could happen, something else occurred. The maintenance hatch was gone. Not broken, not damaged, just missing. The concrete floor where it used to sit had collapsed inward slightly, exposing the pit completely. The dirt inside was no longer flat. It had been pushed upward into a narrow mound, like something had been slowly rising toward the surface. The smell pouring out of that opening was overwhelming now. People stepped back immediately. One of the workers said we should leave the site until inspectors arrived. But as we stood there looking into the pit, the Ferris wheel above us made a long, slow creak. The metal frame shifted slightly, and the mound of dirt inside the pit moved again. Something underneath was definitely there. No one climbed down to check. We all just stared at the opening in silence. Maybe stress played tricks on my mind, or maybe some places carry things we simply don't understand. But one thing I believe with certainty is this: everything happens by the will of Allah. Nothing moves, nothing changes, and nothing touches our lives without His knowledge. Everything happens according to Allah's will, and maybe some questions are not meant to be answered. After that day, the city closed the site permanently. The Ferris wheel was never dismantled. The smell eventually faded, according to the reports, but the structure still stands at the edge of that abandoned fairground. And sometimes, when the wind turns in the late afternoon, people nearby say a faint sour scent drifts through the air again. I don't know what was beneath that ride. No one ever opened the ground to find out. But if you've ever visited an old carnival and noticed a strange smell near the rides, tell me in the comments. Stories like yours are exactly why Unblinking keeps exploring the quiet corners people usually ignore. And if this story made you uneasy, share it with someone who enjoys mysteries like this. Because some places look harmless on the surface, but something beneath them might still be moving.